Hello, folks. How we doing today? Welcome to another episode of Wednesday Word with Dr. Durene I. Wheeler, and I want to thank you for joining us. I am excited to be continuing our story behind the story series featuring desperate women, desperate measures, narratives of women who found God in the shadows, edited by our own continuing guest, y'all, Dr. Betty M. Lovelace. Over the past few episodes, Dr. Lovelace and I have explored the anthology through conversations about forgiveness, storytelling, faith, and the power of women telling their own stories. Now we're expanding the conversation by welcoming some of the contributing authors that share their stories behind the stories. Today, I am most delighted to welcome Dr. Shon, author of When Silence Screams. And am I pronouncing your name right? I feel like I didn't pronounce it
Ron,
right. Dr.
Doc-
Shon. Dr.
yes.
Shon, I have to tell you that your chapter was the first one I read, and it blew me away. There were parts of your story that felt like a mini mirror in some of my own experiences with grief and loss. So I am
Mhm.
especially grateful for you taking time and to join our audience and be with us today. So I want to welcome you to
Thank
Wednesday
you.
Word.
Thank
So
you.
before we get into your story, can you please tell our viewers and listeners a little bit about yourself, how you came to know Dr. Betty Lovelace, and how you became involved with this anthology?
Okay, well, say my in my daytime, I am a nonprofit executive director. Been an executive director of Resident Resources Network, a nonprofit that provides supportive services to residents of affordable housing across 90 housing communities that we serve. But been doing that for about 12 years. Prior to that, been in the nonprofit sector more than 30 years to tell my age, but more than 30 years in a variety of capacities, working with folks with disabilities, working with young folks at risk of delinquency. About 10 years, I was a program evaluator. So, kind of an eclectic background of sorts around my experience. And then, uh, in terms of my education. My education is how I came to know Dr. Lovelace, Dr. Betty Lovelace. I was a student of Denison University. I won't tell what years, but certainly when I was there at Denison, I consider Dr. Lovelace my mama away from home.
I
She
love
got to know a whole lot about me
that.
at Denison. I'm from Youngstown originally, the oldest of four children, oldest of I don't know how many grandchildren my grandma has, but I'm still the oldest grandchild. And my dad had eight brothers and sisters.
Wow.
But my mom had seven or has seven, but she's gone. But and so met Dr. Lovelace at Denison, and certainly through the years have been in touch here and there, sort of thing. But that's kind of the backstory of how I met Dr. Lovelace. Just her being that second mom to me, because I was a big old baby at first when I got to Denison, crying and snotting and wanting to go home, and it just really
Were you first generation?
yes, yes,
Okay.
yes, yes.
I understand that. Yeah.
Mama was not having it. It almost didn't happen, honestly, the way that it all happened. Fashion design was my first love. I wanted to
Mhm.
be a fashion designer, uh,
Okay.
but did not go in that path at all. I actually had one of those overnight visits to Denison University, and I went and kicked it and had a ball. And they, from the little application you had to do to be a part of the overnight, offered me that full ride scholarship from there. And
Awesome.
it was in the middle of the night, but my godfather came and brought me the money I needed to make sure I got there that first day, because you had to
Oh,
just $150 to secure your spot that we did not.
girl, it was 400 for me. So I feel
So yeah, that's how I came to know Dr.
Oh
Lovelace.
my God, that's beautiful. So tell us a little bit about how you became involved with the anthology and what inspired you to write this particular story.
Well, that all thanks to Dr. Lovelace inviting me to be a part of the anthology. It was, a pleasant surprise for her to ask me to be a part of it. I don't know that you've ever really seen real writing of mine at all to have me be a part of it. But I know you familiar. She was definitely familiar with my story, and in terms of what I ultimately wrote about.
Mm,
And for me, writing about it, that was the most gut wrenching, most difficult thing I've ever had to go through in my life. That it was
mm.
an immediate and easy choice to focus on that as a part of the piece that I wrote.
Wow. So could you tell me a little bit about, just tell the audience who hasn't read it, just give a quick synopsis of what I'm going to read the title.
Okay.
And if you could just say a little bit about how the title came about, and that might also give us a little glimpse into the story. Because I don't
Okay.
want to give nothing away, because y'all need to read this story because you will be touched, you will be moved, you will be inspired.
Thank you.
When silence screams.
So for me, it was just a kind of pivotal moment in my life when my husband, who I had just married, we got married. We had been married barely a year,
Mm,
but had been going through it in that first year. Nobody told me to expect anything like what I went through in that first year. But as we went through all of that anger and the like, there was just a moment, a brief moment as we were going through arguing. He had moved out and we were trying to figure out where things were going to go from that moment. That in there happened to be just a split moment of time that he came home,
mm,
and it happened to be Halloween. Uh, Good God. Whew. Um, Still
it's
happened to be
okay.
Halloween that he came home,
Mm,
or a couple days before. But that's one of the days that we always love to celebrate together in terms of the kids with the trick or treating and the costumes and the like. And we sitting in the garage giving out candy. It's just a tradition for us. But that window. He came home. We had a small opportunity one night, maybe to have some conversation, and then Halloween came. And during that night, we had really good conversation. And he said he was going upstairs because he had a toothache. And went upstairs, and I went about maybe 15 minutes later after we finished everything to go check on him. And I promise I still believe that I heard his last breath, but it
mm,
was just still so weird. Like it was
mhm,
just so quiet. So like it just something wasn't right.
mm,
But just to go touch him, talk to him, whatever, he was gone.
mm.
um, and so we weren't married, we barely were married a year.
Mm.
But we had been together 20 years.
Yes. That's the
Right.
blessing. That's the blessing.
We were together. My mama loved him, my daddy loved him, all of that, right? My family loved him. He felt like he was part of our families. But uh, just that night of losing him to what ultimately was a heart attack. And the
Mm.
toothache, from what I understand, was a sign that he was
Oh,
actually having some issue. Found that out after the fact, of course.
right.
Right. So, it was just trying to really process all of that that really got me to saying, not only was not just processing it, but I felt like it was really a retarded healing for me. It felt very slow, very like
Mm,
I was doing this all wrong, all wrong.
mm,
And I
mm,
felt like this piece would be a way for me to start processing,
mm,
thinking through, talking through, because with him being taken like that, and we had been going through all of that stress and strife and arguing, I had so many questions, so many
Mm,
unanswered questions that I could no longer ask him, could not rectify what happened anymore. That it was all just in my own head then that I'm having to figure out, how do I move past this? How do I
mm,
move past this without answers, without being able to really, talk through it and heal through it with him.
mhm, mhm.
So that brought me to, yeah, this is the right story
Yes.
for me to tell and try to, they always talk about how it's cathartic for you to be able to, talk through, write through, whatever, some sort of, you know, uh, experience that you've had. And so I was hoping that that would be what was happening for me, is that I just really got a chance to think more about what happened, really, because I closed doors after all that. The thinking about it, remembering all that, I had to shut down doors,
Yeah.
because it was just way too much. I
Yeah.
absolutely had to shut down doors. So
And Shon, how are you processing through it? Or how have you processed through
Mm.
it?
I will absolutely say, for me, it's movement. I have to keep moving in order for me to be able to, because unfortunately, I say it unfortunately because I do believe you have to talk about stuff. You got to get processing openly, outwardly in some way. I did go through individual counseling, grief counseling, but didn't feel like that was the right path. That ultimately, even today, it still feels like I just kind of get myself up and get ready and go face that day every day. And that's just how I'm going to have to deal with it. Just get up and
Mhm.
go. And in the midst of that, all the kind of things that I need to see and hear happen in the movement. The more that I sit still and I'm crying, I'm snotting and just balled up in my bed, right? That I'm not necessarily open to and receiving the kind of stuff that I'm receiving when I'm moving.
And you talked about some of that movement being work.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's what I've always done that. Like I'm like, I can't control my personal, but I can control the professional. And
Right.
so how did work help or hurt the process?
I mean, so with that movement, I think it's just a matter of keeping my mind busy and going. That I don't got time to be sitting and
Yes.
being all sad and depressed and the like, right? Because I'm moving, and moving with purpose is even, I
Yes.
think, better at the end of the day. Like for me, work, I I'm the head of a nonprofit, and so at the end of the day, I'm always thinking about the recipient of the services being provided, regardless of where I'm in the chain of those providing the service. I always know who I'm serving at the end of the day, and so that kind of focus of, I got to make sure I'm doing what needs to be done for this nonprofit to serve the needs well of those that we're serving. I'm focused, right?
Okay.
I love to play pool, and so I'm on the pool table regularly. I ain't got time to be thinking about other
I
stuff.
love it. I love it. Tell me
Right.
about the motorcycle. I saw a picture with you on a motorcycle and
Yes,
I was like, woo,
ma'am.
woo, woo.
That motorcycle part, that part is interesting because I wrote in there that I got the motorcycle. Me and him learned
Yes.
together. We bought a motorcycle together, and he really more so let me learn more than he did, for the most part. But that every time I'm on that motorcycle, I'm reminded of him right there behind me and watching me going in circles and the like. And it's a being on that bike is almost a spiritual journey
I love
of
that.
sorts, where I feel when I'm on that bike, it's like a oneness with God.
Mm.
Every the mountains, the air, the even manure is something that actually, honestly, is really about feeling all of the beauty and greatness of this earth, right? That I'm traveling across. But I also have those moments where, because you can't do anything but think. Of course, now I have music on my bike, very loud music that I'm playing where I'm trying to drown out anything. But those thoughts creep in when you're seeing all that majesty and thinking about, thinking in general. The thoughts creep in definitely. But yeah, can't ride a motorcycle with tears at all. So
Mm.
I've had to learn to control
Okay.
control
Okay.
those thoughts. That's not a good thing to be having tears as you're trying to focus on that road.
Sean, I have two questions, and I'm just overly excited to ask both of them. So I'm going to put them both out there,
Okay.
and you can respond in either, to either one first. But I know that you have a title when silence screams. I want you to speak to that. What will your readers walk away with from just the title? That's one. The second part is you also speak to the role of the church or lack thereof.
Mm.
One of the things that Doreen asked me, I don't know if it was last week, we were talking, Doreen, and we talked about this whole notion of faith and the church. And one of the things I said was when the potential authors began working, I didn't know and still didn't know until the end of this whole experience. I didn't know what your faith was. That's with any of the contributors. I didn't know if you were active in church or totally out of church. I didn't know any of those things, and it didn't matter. But I'd like for you to speak to both the role or lack thereof, and couple that with the faith that you carry to this day with you, and then
Mhm.
talk about the title of your piece. I'm
Okay.
sorry to throw that at you,
No,
but
thank you, Betty. Thank you.
Yeah, I knew there was something I was forgetting about with the title at the end. That because Dr. Wheeler did ask me that. But so, first of all, I was definitely brought up in the church, and I remember from my grandparents all the way through. Probably my parents' divorce is about when, and I was probably about 12 when my parents' divorce is around the time when we really kind of just moved away from the church more than anything. But we always have had a family church. Absolutely have uncles, cousins who are pastors and the like. And so I absolutely have a very solid foundation in terms of being brought up in the church. I also have a whole lot of experiences with my mom. My mother was one of the most fun-loving people you could absolutely meet. However, she was part of a family that all other brothers and sisters of hers were in the church. They were a part of our family church. She was not. She drank. She loved to drink 151. She was always smoking her cigarettes. But my mom's heart was bigger than anybody's that
See?
you could imagine. She
See?
always opened her home, her heart, her cupboards, the whole nine, right? But she was always judged. And
Mm.
that judgment slowly but surely pushed me away from the family, and that being also the church. And so, just not wanting to constantly be in that feeling of every time I'm around y'all, I feel like I'm doing wrong. But
Yeah.
at the same time, we look at and compare lives, like end of the day, there's a whole lot that my mama can be proud about in terms of what she did with her children, herself, the whole nine, right? But ultimately it was that scrutiny of her, that treating her like the black sheep of the family,
Mm.
that led to us being less involved in the church. Also, that my dad left leaving, we just became less involved. And not that he was even involved in the church, it just meant a different direction for my mom at that time,
Mm.
right? But and then there was just, like many other families, not even just black, there were all kind of stories and skeletons and the like happening within that background of our family that I was always like, how dare you? How dare
Mm.
you even begin to look at my mom in any particular way when I see his. So trying not to say too much without divulging my family stuff, but I think that's
You
hugely
girl, you
what.
working it, you doing it. You saying what you need to say, and if they can't read between the lines, that's their problem. Like, do you? We be ourselves on Wednesday Word. We ourselves.
Oh, definitely. I've always still been the type that no, I do still yearn for a church home sort of thing, right? One where I am not gonna feel like I'm constantly being judged because that's what I came from, and I ain't trying to deal with that. And I did try different churches here and there, and just didn't happen. But ultimately, that foundation for me, I think, is still what always led me in terms of in those times of struggle, I'm still going inward and introspective and trying to have conversation with God. What in the world? Please help me. I don't know where to go, what to do, guide me, protect me, all of those things. So that's still part of who I am, even though I haven't been as involved in the church as I used to be. But really, in terms of this whole experience, my husband dying. I'm trying not to say too much, but my uncle eulogized, and I ain't see him after that.
Mm.
Right? It's that kind of thing where,
Mm. Yeah.
It makes it
so,
hard. It makes it hard
hmm,
to go back to a
mm-hmm,
structure, the
mm-hmm,
church, but
yep,
it doesn't make it hard necessarily to go inward to find the God within.
exactly,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. Yes, man. That's what I felt like I had to resort to. I did not feel like I had guidance and protection in that direction
Mm-hmm.
from that side of the family. And so, my dad, of course, he was my other knight in shining armor. So he absolutely helped me see things through. But in terms of that silence piece, how I got to the title, when that all happened, the night that it happened, man, I immediately just shut down. Immediately shut down, and it was in my own world, and I couldn't hear half the stuff that was going on. It was just little sounds of sort of people talking to me. I see your mouth moving, but really, well, I'm not even processing what you're saying.
Mm.
Having to get up and go and move and do things, I'm floating. I'm just floating, sort of thing. And so I'm feeling like I'm kind of almost sort of in a cocoon where after all of that happened, I didn't feel like I had no real place to go. My dad, yes, would have been there for me. What happened with my dad was that I said I wanted to go to counseling, and he was adamant that I do not do that. Uh,
Mm.
and when I decided to do so, he got angry with me. So I didn't talk to my dad much in the first few weeks following, first couple months even following, to where I truly just felt like I was in this cone of silence,
Mm.
trying to figure out where to move, how to move, what to do. And the more that stuff started happening with my dad, even, it's just that constantly going further and further into myself to where I think is where the silence is coming from more than anything,
Mm.
that I'm not hearing, I'm not really feeling, I'm not really doing, I'm just here, sort of thing, is the way that I was feeling. But it just was so hard to get outside of myself. Absolutely was hard to get outside of myself until I started realizing, and at least in my mind, feeling like I was getting breadcrumbs, feeling like I
Mm.
was getting little nuggets of inspiration and just motivation to move. but overarchingly, it was just that cone of silence for me, that and once that all happened, I just immediately folded inside of myself, and it was hard, very hard to feel like I was a part of any real life, really, honestly. It's
Mm,
just kind of in the background floating.
mm.
Sean,
Well,
there's some.
no,
Go
go
ahead,
ahead,
Doreen.
Betty. No,
I
you
was
go
going to
ahead.
say one of the things that you talked about is the use of sound to drown the silence.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Speak a little about
Yes.
that without, again, disclosing too much that's in the story, because folks have got to pick up the
Mhm.
book, read the
True, very
stories.
true. That's true. Very true. Right. I mean, well, just for me in general, first of all, I grew up in Youngstown, Ohio, where we used to sit on the porch and just love to listen to the cars go by with loud systems.
Yes.
And so I've
I'm from Cleveland.
always,
I'm from Cleveland originally, so I feel you. Front
and
porch, back porch. Yep.
yes, and my family always has been a musical family as well. So anytime there's something going on, like my mama, we know my mama was sad because she played certain songs, right? That we just
Mm.
knew. No pain, no gain. Like you knew mama was in her space. So it's that same sort of thing for me. Like music just helps kind of, for me, it helped drown, at least lessen the silence for me, that I'm feeling something. I'm feeling something. Music, always kind of takes me to a place in space. But more than anything, I'm really not listening to the words. It's just really more than anything, just the sound is
Mhm.
helping me to move
Hmm.
and not feel like I got to sit and then I'm just going to sit and wallow in what it is that I'm going through. So sound has always been, I've always loved loud music. And so in order for me to really, as I start dealing with feeling like I'm folding in, folding again, I just start putting on music and listening and feeling, how do I get myself out of this funk that I'm in? And so and I love to dance as well. So the music wasn't just music alone. Dancing and enjoying myself while I'm listening to the music.
Mm.
So yeah, that's more than anything, is that sound that really helped me drown out the silence. Because more otherwise, it was really just small voices that I'm hearing in the silence that really start helping me to push forward as much as did the sounds of that.
Hmm. Okay.
Mm, that's beautiful. And it's making me think, is there anything that you couldn't include or that you would like to share with us now?
I was trying to think about that and whether I wanted to, in what direction I wanted to go. And the only thing the first thing that came to mind to me, honestly, was um, that Dre, who I talk about in the book, was not the first angel that came to me and for me in the
Mm.
midst of my grief. I do talk about my cousin and her role as well. But there was another gentleman that I came across that was the first time and opportunity that I had for somebody who just let me be. Oh,
Mm.
there was no expectation of, you got to be strong or you got to put on a certain look for somebody or anything. You want to talk about David, let's talk about him. Whereas other folks are like, again, are we talking about this again? Like, yeah, we are. I'm trying to get through some stuff and I want to, talk about him, to where eventually I don't talk about him anymore. And that's where that silence continues, because ain't nobody trying to talk about it for real. So I'm having to fold back in inwardly and process things on my own. And so just the way that it happened, I think, is what came to mind more than anything, where I still am a believer of, one, I'm a full believer in the power of love. I love love. But it's just God is in the midst of everything. It's just so this gentleman is somebody that it was kind of that absolute, is this somebody who's in your life for a season or for a reason or for a season sort of thing. And I was at a live jazz band, listening to music. Woman comes up to me and says, "I need to introduce you to somebody." Okay. She gets on the phone and calls a coworker who ends up getting dressed, comes over to where we are at this live band. She told him that the woman that you have been seeking and looking for is here. So you need to get here. That man got there and we danced all night, and just had such a good time. And he, though, was from another state. And so I, was hoping and thinking that it was going to be, and his job sent him back home. And it was like, whoa, what now, sort of thing, right? And for me, in retrospect, and even going through it too, it felt like it was just another one of those kind of, I still call them breadcrumbs, but something that was helping me along that journey. Something that I needed in that moment right there, something that I had to recognize was good for the journey in that moment. But ultimately, just something that I know it is part of what helped me begin to move forward.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Wow.
Shon,
Yes.
is there anything you would tell your younger self, given what you have experienced, given the narrative, the powerful narrative that you've written, and you've sat with it? I'm sure you have reread it a few
Right.
times, and you probably stood in awe with some of the things. But as you read it, thought about it, reflected on it, is there anything you would tell your younger self about life, about, the generation? I don't know what generation it is. Life be lifing. Durene and I spoke about that. Is there anything you would tell that younger self about life be lifing?
Lifing. I love it.
The thing that comes to mind is what I had in my mind when you had the question of, as I kind of reflected on this, what did I hope readers would understand about the experience? And so it's still that same thing for me. Is that listening different? As a young person, I'm just going, I'm going, I'm going, I'm going. I am barely paying attention. In these moments, I was inward, I was quiet, I could listen and hear differently, right? To my younger self, I would probably say that I would have to slow down and listen a little bit differently than I was back then. I was a firecracker back then. Definitely not even back then, but I absolutely know.
Not so long ago.
Right.
I think we all got some of that in us still.
But I just know I did not listen and look for those kinds of things and receive them in the way that, the things that I talk about in the book that I feel like were breadcrumbs. Had I received them probably when I was younger, I don't even know that I would have received them at all. I would have probably felt I'm just balling and fall apart sort of thing versus something like losing my necklace that had his ashes in it. Lost my mind that day, but I also figured it's time to let go, Shon. It's time. You done wore that thing out. You done wore it out, right? So that probably would still be what I'm saying to my younger self is you got to slow down and listen and watch for those divine sorts of signs that really are what I consider kind of those little voices that you have in your head. The more that I age, boy, I do believe that those are divine voices that are speaking to me, because it is always
Mm-hmm.
like, boy, if I had to just listen to that voice in my head, that
Mm,
I I definitely now more days than I did when I was younger. I stop and try and take stock of what might be the lesson that I'm supposed to be learning here versus just being consumed and upset and, trying to move past it.
mm. So, this is so powerful. I don't even want to end this. Like, this is just so powerful. I just need to breathe because
Yes,
you are such a blessing.
thank
And I
you.
just really, really need you to know how watching you and listening to you and reading your story is just really helping me with my own grief. And I just appreciate you.
Thank you.
I
Thank
appreciate you. And I appreciate you for sharing because the other thing that she didn't talk about, and I'm just going to get this away a little bit, is her father also passed, and that's in this
you.
story.
Yeah.
And as we close and as we think about this whole journey that you've gone through with, like you say, your 2 nights,
Yep.
and your mom had already been, taken from you. Like,
Mhm.
what do you hope readers understand about your own experience, about your faith, and about lessons God might have for them in your story and in your journey?
The thing that came to mind when I was thinking about that question was you don't have to feel whole to move forward.
Mm,
I definitely feel, I gotta you feel like you got to be on point. Everybody expecting you to, pull yourself up, get yourself back on track, and you should be fine. And what you see mostly on the outside is because most folks do. Once something like that happens, you still got to get back on the horse, keep on going, keep on working, and folks act like stuff barely even happened, sort of thing. But you are completely broken as folks are still moving forward, and you got to figure out, man, what now. Thankfully, I did
Mm-hmm.
have a couple of angels who helped kind of sweeping up the pieces, right, and pulling it back together. But ultimately, I knew that I felt like the more that I was moving, the more that I felt like I was healing.
mhm.
So even though I didn't want to get up, I didn't
I
want
feel
to.
that. I feel
Whew,
that.
I do. I can't tell you how many times though that I was so like, I'm not today, not today. And the voice is like, Shon, get your behind up.
Mm,
And I get there and I'm like, well, I'll be doggone. Had I not come, had I not got up, geez, oh man. So, and there have been too many of those for me. That's why I
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
absolutely am a believer in the voices, the listening different. Like it's real for me. I'm absolutely almost like I'm trying to amplify my hearing, right? To try
mm,
and see if I can get more messages that I'm somehow missing because of the day to day and all that's going on. Um, but
But
yeah, yeah.
you don't have to be whole to move forward, but what do you have to be?
mm,
I would definitely say that I had faith that I was going to be okay.
Okay,
And
okay,
mm,
that I was
okay,
going to be okay. I
okay.
still having that foundation in the church. I absolutely was a firm believer. All things are
Mm-hmm.
possible through Christ
Mm-hmm.
who strengthens me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a believer, right? But ultimately, in those moments, it was just to have
Yeah,
to find it myself versus
yeah.
being able to go to the church pastor or go on to somebody who was going to really, pray over me and help me really. I didn't get a whole lot of prayer. I didn't get a whole lot at all.
mm, mm,
It
mm,
was a lot of inward
Yes,
introspection.
and that's part of it. You have to go within because if the Imago Dei, God within us, that's what you're going to get
mm,
right there.
Yep.
mm,
Yes.
So you don't have to be whole, but you do have to be open to going somewhere, which is very
Yeah.
often within. And sometimes it is finding a resource outside of yourself. It's almost like, remember, Sean, we talked about that crutch metaphor, and I
Mhm.
remember sharing with you that I was out walking one morning and I saw this lady on a crutch, and she used that crutch to go up the hill. And so each morning that I would come out walking or riding my bike, I would see her with this crutch under her arm, and it is her
Mm.
support. So much so that one day, while I was out riding my bike, I saw this lady, and she had tossed that crutch over her
Mhm.
shoulder, and she was carrying that crutch. So the
Okay.
very thing that carries you, you were then placed in a position to be able to carry the pain,
Mm.
to
Yep.
carry whatever it
Yeah.
was that at one point,
Absolutely.
even the music, the loudness of the music, it was a crutch for you, but
It
now
was.
that you're able to own it, know it for what it was, you
Mm.
now
Mm.
carry that. It doesn't have the
Yeah.
same force that it once had on you. So,
Oh, I absolutely would fully agree with that. It was so many times that I was hiding from the silence. Like, how do I get away from this silence? Oh my God.
Mm.
And now there
Mm.
are times where I'm like, okay, Sean, you gotta sit in it. You gotta sit in it. The
yeah,
music
that's
ain't on,
powerful.
and I can
That's
Yeah.
feel like
powerful.
my body, like the music ain't
Yeah.
on. Oh my God. And Sean, just chill
Yeah,
out.
and you even at one point, I don't know if this is in your story, but it was in the conversations that we had. You even had I don't know if it was a television or something put in your bathroom.
Yes,
Yes.
yes, I read that. I was like, shut the front door. No, she didn't.
Now that's
That
that's
that
pretty.
that's like woo.
Drowning
That
out that
drowning it
silence.
out.
Yeah,
Yes,
What's
but
next?
like
What's
ma'am.
you
next for
say,
you? What's next for you?
you
Not in
know,
terms of profession, not in terms of just a general question. What do you see as your next?
For me, I alluded a little bit to it, is I've been doing a lot of pouring myself into my next generation. I don't have children
mm,
myself, but I have nieces and nephews, and
yes,
they just came for their annual, spending a couple of weeks with Auntie for the
I
summer.
love that.
That is something I've been doing. My niece is 27, been doing that since she was little. Um,
Mm,
Mm,
and so the one that I just referred to is the one who was here when all of that happened.
yes, yes,
And
yes.
mm,
I absolutely abandoned her. I absolutely abandoned her in all of that. She was probably what, 19, 20 at the time. I just went all the way inward. But now that I'm in a better place, I'm more whole. I absolutely know my babies are watching me.
yeah,
And so I want to pour more into them, is really what my focus is more than
Mm-hmm.
anything.
Mm-hmm.
I certainly feel like uh, I can do more in the way of my own healing and journey. Absolutely. And that, it's still, I barely got in 5 minutes and I was ready to start crying, right? That is still ain't over.
yeah.
But at the
You
same
got a
time,
hole in your heart. That's what you said. And that's
yeah,
what I think anybody who has great loss like that, you have to learn how
Mm,
to operate with that hole in your heart. And that's what you're
absolutely.
mm,
doing.
mm,
Absolutely. Yep. Never going
mm.
away. Never going away.
I
Nor
love
should
it.
it. That's a
Mhm.
part of you. That helped to define you and still helps to define
Yes, it
you in some
does.
ways. So, yeah.
Absolutely does.
All right. Okay, ladies. So thank you, Dr. Sean. Thank you for sharing not only your story that people can read in the pages of Desperate Women, Desperate Measures. You need to get your copy,
Yes,
but
ma'am.
also the story behind the story. And I really appreciate your willingness to be open, to be vulnerable, to reflect, and to allow us the inner journey that you went through and are still going through, and it's an inspiration. And Betty, Dr. Lovelace, thank you again for your vision in bringing desperate women, desperate measures, narratives, women who have found God in the shadows to life, and for creating a space where these women could tell their stories. And as a contributing author myself, I'm just grateful for not only my part in this anthology, but also to have the opportunity to sit with my fellow contributing authors
Yes.
and continue these conversations and beyond the pages of the book and to get to know each of y'all better. And I believe that it's powerful things happen when we as Black women tell our stories in our own voices, from our own experiences, and through the lens of our faith, our struggles, our healing, and our journeys. And that is really at the heart of the Story Behind the Story series. There's
Nice.
always more behind the stories we tell, what we learned, what we've survived, what we're still learning, and sometimes even the things we weren't quite ready or able to say on the pages. Over
Mm.
the next several episodes, Wednesday Word with Dr. Lovelace as my wonderful guest, and I will continue to talk with contributing authors and explore their stories behind the stories. So until next time, remember your story matters. Your
Nice.
voice matters. And you never know how sharing your story might help someone else find their way through the shadows. Be
Mhm.
blessed and be a blessing. Until the next time you are with us on Wednesday Word, we're out.